Okay,
That's
welcome
fine.
back, everyone. I hope you had a fulfilling lunch. Because we're running out of time, we'd like to get this session started with Hadil, who's our Human Rights Director. And so, without any further ado.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Hadil. I'm the Human Rights Outreach Coordinator at the religion, the Ahmadi Religion of Peace and Light. I've been a member of this faith since 2011, all the way back in Egypt. I also work for Amnesty International as a country coordinator for Algeria and Libya. So part of my work, first, as you see, the name or the topic of the presentation is religious freedom and human rights, and freedom obviously being very big because this is really the core or a core aspect of our faith, that we believe that every human being should enjoy freedom of their choices regardless of their background. So, as part of my work at the religion, what I do is I document and I receive cases of persecution from our members around the world. So when I first started my job with the religion, I started receiving pictures like this. So, as you see, pictures of extreme violence, police brutality, attacks on properties and cars, police violence, at the borders, refugee crisis for members from really all around the world. As a religion, of course, as you've seen in the first presentation, believe in the covenants and believe in a divinely appointed messenger means there's constant renewal. And this has, so because of this, because our religion is a religion that's grounded in human rights, that's seen as a very progressive religion in the Muslim world. We have always been a subject of attacks, extremist targeting of our members. But it wasn't until the release of the Goal of the Wise, the official gospel of the religion, that we've actually seen a systematic spike in the persecution against our members after December 2022. And systematic persecution means it involves state and non-state actors. So a wave started from Algeria to Iran, to Iraq, to Morocco, to Turkey, even to Egypt, to Azerbaijan, and other countries that are still suffering from this persecution after the release. And it even led to fatwas or religious decrees that are issued by official government institutions for religious affairs, issuing religious decrees that are calling out the religion to be heretic, and that, of course, is a green light for them to be killed or attacked. Okay, so I'm just going to go briefly into what these beliefs are that were reasons for persecution. So we've talked about Iran at the beginning. Iran, the basis of the regime is the so-called Wilayat al-Faqih, or believing that Khomeini, Khamenei, these are people who speak in the name of God. We don't believe that in the religion. And we don't believe that religious scholars or religious institutions have that divinity. They do not speak in the name of God. And because of that, Iran, there was an extreme backlash from the state, to the extent that they actually, and we've gone into this, produced propaganda documentaries airing on national Iranian TV, defaming the religion. But here, for example, if you see in the Goal of the Wise, it clearly states that the Shiite institutions appointed false marjas and imams such as Khomeini and Sistani to lead them and introduced the heretical doctrines of taqlid. So we believe a human being who's not appointed by God doesn't get to speak in the name of God. And that was, so that was part of the persecution in Iran. And this aspect from the Goal of the Wise was very problematic for our members in Iran. In Islam, you cannot, if claims of distortions in Islam are blasphemous. In the first presentations, you've seen how we've spoken that we believe there have been 124,000 messengers who came with a true message, but each of these messages over time got distorted, including Islam. And in the Goal of the Wise, it's clearly stated that 99% of religion is wrong. Not 99% of all religions, but 99% of each religion, including Islam. Obviously, very problematic in the Muslim world to make a statement like this. As part of the beliefs also, and it's written in the Goal of the Wise, we believe that the Kaaba, which is currently in Mecca, is not the actual real Kaaba, and that the actual Kaaba is in Petra, Jordan, not in Saudi Arabia. And here it's written in the Goal of the Wise that the current Kaaba that everyone knows belongs to Quraysh, but this is not even its real place. So the original Kaaba of Quraysh was demolished, and this is a new Kaaba that they recently built, meaning the one in Saudi Arabia. And the Imam further clarifies that the exact location is in Petra, Jordan. And we know even in countries like Thailand, in the laws, it's written that even just speaking about or what is seen as criticizing a sacred house of worship is punishable by law. Prayer, it's stated in the Goal of the Wise, and is as part of our beliefs, is not in the way that it is practiced in the Muslim world today. So in the Muslim world, prayer is a main pillar of Islam. If you cannot question the time, the ritual, or the manner of prayer. It's very specific. As part of our faith, we don't believe that. We believe prayer is a very intimate, personal conversation with God that can happen anytime, anywhere, however it doesn't have any specific ritual or timing, and that's why we don't observe the 5 daily prayers that are in Islam. Written in the Goal of the Wise, the Imam clarified that God has no need for someone to recite words that were written or memorized, but rather if you want to pray to God, speak to Him from your heart and do not look for written words. Also now the Muslim world is observing Ramadan. We believe as part of the faith that there has been a corruption in the Muslim calendar, that the calendar was originally a solar calendar, not a lunar calendar. So the Muslim world believes that the month move, so Ramadan can happen summer, winter, fall, anytime. But we believe that this is not how it is, that the calendar is a fixed calendar. And as part of our faith, Ramadan always falls in December. And the philosophy behind that was the famous incident of Karbala, where the grandson of Prophet Muhammad was martyred. And in that event, it is written in the narrations that the angels actually made a dua or a prayer to God that as a punishment, the Muslim nation would not be given success to fast at the correct time. So after this, and there has been a narration written here, after this, the Muslims have lost the way, lost the calendar, and are now not making pilgrimage or fasting at times other than the actual calendar as it should be. And here the Imam says that for over 1,000 years, the Muslim nation has been fasting in times other than Ramadan and making pilgrimage and Hajj in times other than its decreed season. And of course, I lived in Malaysia for a while. If you're sitting and you're in Ramadan or eating in broad daylight, in some states it even leads to being lashed, to extreme punishment. So this is a very heavy thing to not observe in a Muslim world, Ramadan at the time of Ramadan, and has been cited as grounds for persecution. As you see, we do not believe that headscarf is an obligation. We believe it's a choice, and the religion is, like I said, it's grounded in human rights and gender equality, and we believe women have a choice in how they want to dress or not to dress. And we believe that the headscarf is not an obligation, but it's only been a sunnah. So it's up to women to choose to wear it or not. And of course, that was also a ground for persecution against our members in Iran specifically. Now, as you see, the symbol of our faith is the 6-pointed star, and that we believe represents the universe. We known as the Star of David, and we see it as an inheritance of the prophets and messengers. In the Muslim world, the Star of David is immediately tied to Zionism. And it has been many times also been grounds for persecution and specifically in Iran actually, where the believers were called Zionist, or that it's a Zionist project because of the symbol of our faith being the six-pointed star. Also written in the Goal of the Wise. Also in the Muslim world, it's out of question you cannot attribute a mistake to the prophets and messengers. Prophets and messengers are perfect from birth to death and have never committed a mistake. In the Goal of the Wise and as part of our faith, we believe that's not the case. And as human beings in their journey, prophets and messengers made mistakes. And this is something that's even clearly written in the Quran with Adam alayhi salam. We have, as we've spoken in the morning, we believe in that the story of creation, that the tree in the story of Adam and Eve wasn't actually an apple or a tree. It was actually a person, which was Fatima alayhi salam. So here in the Goal of the Wise, it's written that in the second line, Adam alayhi salam found that God created a woman better than Eve. When he found out that God created a woman better than Eve, he went to Fatima from her peace and attempted to have intercourse with her. And this is why Eve envied Fatima, and the story continues. Specifically in Turkey, this specific part was mentioned and cited as so-called heresy, and members have been arrested because of that. So, as I said, there has always been cases of persecution, but they were more, I wouldn't say isolated, but the actual systematic wave of persecution started in Algeria. So in 2021, there was a whole community of believers in Algeria. They were living together. We believe in believers or the community living together, reading together, studying together. The Algerian authorities conducted a raid on the community, arrested all 22 members, including children, and charged them with denigrating Islam and with participating in an unauthorized group. 3 of the members were imprisoned and 15 were put under house arrest. And the penalty that was prescribed for all of them was 1 to 3 years in prison. The lawyer has given, we were following the case at that time, one appeal after the other, but all the appeals were rejected. It wasn't until Amnesty International got involved and issued several statements. There were children that were also arrested that day. The women were mocked for not wearing hijab. They were told you were running a prostitution house for living together in the same house. How can you not pray? How can you deny Ramadan? How can you even in as part of the faith? I also forgot to mention drinking alcohol is permissible. So the Algerian authorities took this it was a very public case. And here are the statements from Amnesty International. This is the community. As you see, regular men and women and children were having these charges pressed against them. Amnesty International called for all charges against the community to be dropped and for the members to be released. And finally, after the campaign, after 5 months, the charges were dropped and the members were declared innocent. But the Algerian authorities, even though they said there's no crime against them, they actually, on the day that they were released from prison, they told them, you are not allowed to gather, you are not allowed to worship together, and you are basically their right to assembly, their right to worship together is now completely gone. All the members there are not allowed to practice the religion anymore. And worse, this was the tweet from Amnesty International that was following the campaign. And here they announced a day before the case that they called it a travesty of justice and called for them to be released. But the worst part, even though the charges were dropped, there is now a fatwa in Algeria calling the religion, as you see here. This is a translation, so this is the actual Arabic text. This fatwa is still standing. So as we speak, members in Algeria, they even had a meeting last week with the US Embassy. They're not allowed to practice or to proclaim their faith. It's called a misguided group, a heretical group. Out of the Islamic faith, the beliefs are entirely false and invalid. So Iran, this is where we move next, and this is where our connection with the religion and with Willy started. This is when I first got in contact with Willy, because our members had been now moving to mass arrest of more than one member in Iran. So in Iran, we have around 80 members of the faith. The Iranian regime categorically categorizes the religion as a deviant group, and we even had leaked court documents that are not allowed to be circulated that we were able to obtain, where this is actually how they described the religion. And also, according to Article 513 of the Iranian Islamic Penal Code, anyone who insults the sacred values of Islam or any of the great prophets, this is considered Sabb al-Nabi, so meaning bad mouthing or using bad words, shall be executed. So it is extremely dangerous for our members there. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the Iranian regime went as far as producing a propaganda. And these two images are from the documentary against the head of the religion, Abbas Sadiq and Ahmad al-Hassan. So you can see the images they are using. So it's very... Now, after that, after this obviously this documentary was aired on national TV. What was happening is that now families were turning against each other out of fear or out of feeling it's a religious obligation, because the member in my family who believes in this faith is a heretic. So we started having cases of mothers, fathers, neighbors actually reporting members of the faith. One of these cases is Muhammad Riza Shukrianzil. His sister is an asylum seeker who is actually here. She made it here with us in the UK. But his fiancé's family were connected to some of the religious scholars in Marjaz in Iran. They reported him, and he was overnight blindfolded, handcuffed, transported to the Evin prison, which is a very notorious prison in Iran for prisoners of consciousness, daily interrogation, and he was forced to renounce his religion. He was then transferred to a special clergy court, where they first initially sentenced him to 5 years imprisonment and 2 years exile. And after he submitted a letter of repentance, it was reduced to 2 years in exile. Now, when he was put in exile, he was taken to a drug addiction camp before being confined to a completely unfamiliar place. He didn't know anyone. He wasn't allowed to have a job. And then after that, he was arrested a second time in the Evin prison, where he was testifying to violent and inhumane treatment. And here's actually video of him.
با برخوردی بسیار بسیار وحشیانه قبل از شهر خویی با تهدید اسلحه از تاکسی هایی که در اون بودیم پیاده کردند و در جایی که هیچ وسیله گرمایشی نبود، در شبی که بسیار سرد بود و جایی که سقفی نداشت.
So, as I said, after the Gul of the Wise, we've now seen group arrest or mass arrest. And in Iran, then from 2020 to 2024, we had 32 members were summoned by intelligence agency. Of course, the monitoring is there all the time. So our members have always recorded or speaking about their phones being watched. They're not allowed to even communicate on Telegram groups. But now we've seen that they were actually being summoned. And then in 2022, we have 15 members of the faith who were arrested as they were trying to flee the country. They were interrogated and subject to physical abuse. And this is the case that we worked on with Human Rights Without Frontiers, with Willy. And of course, the charges included anti-regime propaganda, and that they are promoting and propagating thoughts and beliefs of the deviant Yemeni movement. Charges also included causing corruption in the land, stirring propaganda against the regime. And in 2022, the arrest happened, like I said, after the Gul of the Wise. They were all taken to the Evin prison. And here you see some of the news articles that were written about this case. Harana, the human rights activist news agency. Here's Professor Ayar Asfar in an interview with Iran International about the case, and obviously the statements by Human Rights Without Frontiers. And in detention, when they were in Evin prison, they were forced to sign papers where they're recanting their faith. And it even went as far as they were forced to make false accusation against themselves, accusing of even being LGBT members, because in Iran this is punishable by death. So overall, there has been persecution from state actors, but also from non-state actors. So many of the members, 2 of them specifically, had their members forcefully taking them to mental institutions where they were forced to have antipsychotic drugs, abused by husbands, physical abuse, domestic violence. People were fired from their workplace, and threats on social media, including death threats. And these were all the number of the documented cases. There's been persecution in other Muslim-majority countries. So it was Sunni countries, Shia countries. But for example, in Iraq, one of the things that many of you probably know is how close Iranian and Iraqi intelligence work together. So after this case in Iran, now the persecution started in Iraq, and the number of believers there is 160. We've started seeing violent raids from militias actually attacking the homes of members of the faith, death threats from religious leaders publicly on TV, and it even went as far as the Iraqi government going and raiding and shutting down an office of an organization that believes in the same imam but are not connected to us. They have confused them with us, with the Ahmadi religion of peace and light, and they ended up banning, shutting down, and arresting everyone who was in the building. Cases in Azerbaijan are also extreme, where we have over 70 members. According to the Azerbaijani criminal law, you're not allowed to produce or disseminate or propagate any religious material that's not approved by the state. And of course, the Azerbaijani government would never approve any of the beliefs that are in the Goal of the Wise. So we had in 2022 over 26 people summoned and to police stations and subjected to physical abuse, with the intelligence agencies being involved as well. Now, I want you to see this video here. This is an actual capture. This is in Iraq, where you can actually see a militia gunning down one of the homes of the members of the faith.
اتخذت البندقية
هذا جاي
اي جاي وحده
And then they take off.
هاي السيارة واقفة.
The crazy thing about that is that this was given to the police because he was able to get the footage. And the inspector then at the police station, he told him, well, you're classified a murtad, a heretic, so you actually deserve to be killed. And the case wasn't taken, and this person had to flee. Now this here, before I start, this is one of an Iraqi scholar who is here speaking to Ahmad, one of the members of the faith, and we have the translation here. This was aired on TV. So here you can see what he's actually saying about the faith.
أنتم أتباع الإسلام الآن كلكم خزي، ووصف المسلمين بالخزي وقال نحن دين جديد، ندعو إلى دين جديد. طيب، وكثير من الدعوات التي هي دعوات واهية لا أصل لها، لأنه نحن نعرف أن من ادعى دين غير دين الإسلام يطبق عليه شرعا حد المرتد، وهذا الحد هو قتله، يستتاب 3 أيام ثم يقتل.
Okay, so obviously with a statement like this, a murtad is given 3 days to repent and then be killed. That's a green light for all types of militias in Iraq to take this in their own hand. Now we have a famous case in Malaysia, and actually as we speak, it was just yesterday or 2 days before, the Malaysian authorities, the office of the Prime Minister, actually made statements where they declared the Ahmadi religion of peace and light to be heretic, to be outside of Islam, and the religion is today banned in Malaysia. And we have some of the Malaysian members here in the room. So maybe in the discussion they can also fill you a little bit more about what happened. But yes, it's declared today as a faith that goes against Islam, and all material of the religion is censored. There was a TikTok account that had over 30,000 followers. It was now shut down. All the material is removed. And the Prime Minister's office, is actually the whole Prime Minister's office went out. The Minister of Religious Affairs warned the Malaysian authorities and warned the Malaysian citizens against the faith and that they should not be influenced by it. And here you see it was mainly covered. We were on the front page of the newspapers, I think yesterday or the day before. And I know Taimur will be speaking to you more about this, but here's some of the news headlines in Malaysia saying that the Ahmadi teachings contradict Islamic laws. Basically, members of our faith, as we say, we are tolerant to all other persecuted religious minorities and non-religious minorities. So our faith is open and accepting to members of the LGBT and who are members of the faith. And because of the extreme violence they were seeing in Malaysia, our members felt it is their duty to go and speak out against that. So 8 members of the faith staged a protest in the center of Kuala Lumpur, speaking out against the persecution of LGBT in solidarity with them. And they were arrested, they were charged and investigated under provisions prohibiting deviant teachings. And this just went viral. All over Malaysia, their pictures were taken. Here you can see, this is on Malaysian national TV speaking about this arrest.
8 lelaki yang berhimpun di hadapan pusat beli belah Sogo di Ibu Negara Sabtu lalu bagi menyokong hak golongan LGBTQ sudah ditahan. Ketua Polis Kuala Lumpur, Dato' Muhammad Suhaili Muhammad Zain berkata, kesemua mereka yang berusia antara 18 hingga 56 tahun itu ditahan pada hari kejadian. Katanya siasatan mendapati kesemua mereka adalah pengikut ajaran The Ahmadi Religion of Peace and Light sejak 2 tahun lalu.
So, apabila kita sampai ke tempat kejadian, kita dapat lihat bahawa mereka telah melaungkan perkataan-perkataan seperti down Syariah Court, only God can be judged, or only God can judge, sambil memegang kain rentang dan beberapa plakat lainlah. So, apa yang kita hasil siasatan mendedahkan bahawa mereka ini semua adalah ahli The Ahmadi Religion of Peace and Light yang berfahaman hukuman ke atas manusia hanya boleh dijatuhkan oleh Tuhan. Kebanyakan individu yang ditahan telah menyertai kumpulan ini hampir 2 tahun. Semasa tangkapan dilakukan, individu tersebut memegang kain seperti mana saya sebut tadi.
Ujarnya siasatan mendapati salah seorang daripada mereka pernah ditahan di Putrajaya 2 minggu lalu kerana mengedarkan risalah mengenai ajaran itu di Masjid Putrajaya. Kesemua suspek direman sehari sebelum dibebaskan dengan jaminan polis. Polis merakam keterangan 11 saksi berkait kes ini dan kertas siasatan akan dilengkapkan sebelum dirujuk ke Timbalan Pendawa Raya untuk arah lanjut. Siasatan dijalankan mengikut Seksyen 186 Kanun Keseksaan, Seksyen 14 Akta Kesalahan Kecil dan Seksyen 9 Akta Perhimpunan Aman 2012.
So, this is their arrest. You'll see cheering, the people who are around. And this was, like I said, it went viral in Malaysia. These members, after the arrest, they couldn't walk with their faces, so they couldn't actually leave the house. They had to have masks, and they even struggled to get bailed out from their families. So here they were taken. Yeah. So as you're seeing, so there's this wave of arrest from all these different countries at the same time, which resulted in many of these people needing to leave as fast as possible to a country where it wouldn't take a lot of time. And the first logical destination for many of them at that time was Turkey. So in Turkey, there were 104 members of the faith. Turkey itself, of course, has a lot of draconian laws that don't allow any freedom of belief or expression, so they were not safe in Turkey as well. So these 104 members from all of these countries in May 2023, decided to attempt to go to the border with Bulgaria and claim asylum. They decided to do this in legal ways. They went to the official border crossing point and had actually spoken with 28 human rights organizations before that step. So they had coordinated. There was an event that we as a religion also documented on our satellite channel. So it was the first time ever that something like this was documented. It was a protection also that we wanted their movement and them being at the border, following the legal ways to claim asylum, for that to be documented. Despite the media presence, we had Alexandra, who's here with us. She was actually there as a journalist covering this. Despite the media presence, despite the human rights organization, the Turkish authorities were extremely brutal. They shot guns in the air, they beat them with batons, even though they were children, as you see, involved. And they arrested the members for 5 months in horrendous conditions, even though the group included 22 children from 1 to 17 years old and 27 elderly and sick members. So here...
They attack me! They attack me! They attack me! Unfortunately, they attacked me, just look at me, with tears on my eyes. They forced us to a bus.
Hidil, you mentioned this earlier. The Turkish police did not do what was right. We were going to look at a humanitarian crisis on the border, and this is now starting to get really the police are pushing them back now. Okay, it's starting to get aggressive now.
And this was all aired on satellite TV. So we broadcast that. And as you can see, the refugees were holding clear banners stating why they're persecuted. So they actually made it a point to make it very clear, we're asylum seekers, we're coming on the official border crossing, we've checked all points, so there should be no reason for this violence. And this was actually a huge scandal for Turkey, which later on ended up in the involvement of the UN, issuing statements for Turkey to, one, drop the deportation orders, and the Foreign Office here in the UK also got involved, because after they rounded up everyone and threw them in the deportation centers, they actually issued deportation orders against them, which was insane. They were just fled these countries because they had death sentences against them. And to deport them back and saying, well, we're going to send 104 members from 7 countries back to the countries they fled from, it was really insane. So 4 UN bodies got involved: the UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Religion and Belief, on Human Rights of Migrants, the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, and the UN Special Rapporteur on Minority Issues. And finally, the group got released. But, you know, after 5 months, there were children that were living, there was violence, there were police in the detention centers beating members of the faith, saying, well, why don't you women wear hijab? Why don't you pray? So people who were sick, they couldn't get any medical care. So imagine 5 months of going through this horror, and then they just released them. And then what does that mean? All these 5 months of that suffering was actually for nothing, because the Turkish courts came out and said what the group has done was fully within the scope of law. They haven't broken any law, and they should not be deported. So here so they basically suffered all of that for nothing. So like I said, it was a huge scandal for Turkey, with here the UN statements that came out after this case. So now, if we look overall, this is some of the numbers of the refugees around the world as part of the faith. We have refugees in Spain, in Germany, in the UK, in Greece, in Poland, in Netherlands, in Latvia. And these numbers in Turkey are actually still stuck there. They can't stay in Turkey, and they also don't have the means to claim asylum. Now, obviously, as these members are seeking refuge in Europe, we had actually one case of persecution in Europe, which was very unexpected. It was in Sweden, which was the one that me and Martin started speaking about. So we were in Sweden between 2019 and 2022. We were around 170 members, and during these years there was actually severe discrimination from the Swedish authorities. What was the motive? It was motivated by prejudice. It was motivated also by extremist groups, ex-disgruntled members of the faith who were attacking the faith because of its progressive beliefs. We would expect a country like Sweden to investigate, or there would be a rule of law where they would look into these claims, especially that none of the members of the faith has ever been indicted or charged with any crime. None of these accusations were substantiated in any court of law, but we found the Swedish authorities acting upon these accusations from extremist groups, leading to regular police harassments, rejecting residencies of the members, and systematically refusing their residencies, declaring on media that they are planning, or that they had a goal of expelling the religion from Sweden, and repeatedly raiding the property of the faith with SWAT teams. Think of the property, a place where people meditate, where people learn religion, where there are children, and we were shocked to have this type of presence in our property. More than 20 police officers, 7 police vehicles, over 5 SWAT officers in full combat gear. And the insanity is they had no legal basis. They couldn't show us a warrant. They said we are here for workspace inspection, even though we are legally registered as a religion. So we had already declared that this is a place of worship. They came in, they didn't find no drugs, they didn't find any weapons, they didn't even investigate, they didn't even talk to anyone, they didn't even interview anyone, no illegal immigration, nothing. And like I said, it was already officially registered in Sweden with Swedish authorities what the property is used for. They were forced to leave after they found nothing. We saw the video here, but they came back again. And of course, by the way, on that day, my daughter was in school. I wasn't allowed to pick her up. Many of the parents, we were not allowed to pick up our children. We're not allowed to leave our property in Sweden. 10 minutes, you don't pick up your children, they were left. So there were children left unattended for over half an hour. And even in Sweden, and we were not allowed to pick them up, even though we said that. And that is a country that claims to be respecting the rule of law and due process. They came again in November 2020. They pushed through to come into the property. Again, no legal ground. It was just a way to gain access into the property. They had no warrant, no legal basis. And of course, the disproportionality with the police presence and the violence and having no legal basis left no room to assume that this was only motivated by religious prejudice. Look at this. This was our place in Sweden. Again, just regular people trying to lead a regular life. Men, women, children, nothing, threatening against their presence. The worst part here, before I go into this, so these incidents that I talked about were systematic against the religion. When they couldn't find anything, we had the Swedish police literally waiting outside the property, hiding in the bushes, and then would target the members of the faith as they're exiting or entering the property. So when going into people's homes, we had 2 U.S. citizens. They went with no with no warrant, and again targeting the members. And speaking about violence, the Swedish authorities accused the members of being a violent cult. With the only violence we saw was from the police. Here, this is a video of a police officer actually smashing the window of one of the members. Even though he asked for his ID, he gave it to him. He still wasn't happy.
It's too late now.
Why is it too late?
To the police station.
Why?
We're going to look you up. We're going to look who are
Why
you.
can't you do that here? Straight up, why can't you do that here?
Explain it to you once.
So if I give you the IDs now,
door,
if I give you the
window, okay?
if I give you If I give you the
Let me take his
IDs
badge
now,
number.
will you not?
What's his badge number? See. You smashed the window.
Step out of the vehicle now.
Smashed the window. You smashed the
Everyone,
window.
step out the vehicle.
You smashed the window, you know.
These are also other cases. I'm just going to go over this quick. Swiss citizens Guillaume Ballet, Ali Haider, UK citizen Leila Lutfi, Egyptian citizen, again stopped. The place we were staying in Sweden was a place in the forest. So they would obviously then when they stopped them there, they took them and they just left Leila completely unattended, being 11 kilometers away in a field, away from her accommodation. Guillaume, he was, again, they took them out of the vehicle. They left the vehicle behind unattended for more than 6 hours, of course, could be stolen. One of the members, Ali Haider, was taken to the police station and they made him strip completely naked and bent forward. They forced them to take a drug test, and in all of their interventions, they never found anyone on drugs. They never found any legal basis for these interventions, which again is indicative that these people were unlawfully targeted for no reason other than their religious affiliation. Now, the big scandal was when they started systematically rejecting residencies of our UK citizens who were British citizens. After Brexit, they had to apply for residency. The Swedish Migration Agency was denying the citizenship. And it wasn't, and after that we had enough. We didn't feel welcome in Sweden. We decided to migrate to the UK. But right after we did that, this is where really the huge scandal was. The Swedish authorities went out on Swedish media with the chief of police and actually made the bold statements or the confession that they collaborated with the migration agency and the tax agency and the enforcement agency to shut down the faith activity in Sweden, referring to the religion as a cult and that is violent and dangerous, that they do not want in the vicinity, and that they used migration as a route. So they actually admitted that they wanted the religion out because they perceived it as dangerous, and because of that manipulated the migration agency and used that as a pretext to expel members of the faith. And people had businesses that were positively covered in local news in Sweden. The police, again, defaming the religion on Swedish media, labeled them as sham, and actually stated that they used the migration route as a pretext. So, I mean, for me, I think this is extremely embarrassing for a country to go out and said that they manipulated and they went on a grand government conspiracy using 3 major government agencies and institutions, and they participated in an illegal act of direct discrimination. The only reason these residencies were rejected was they stated the reason: we do not want them. No legal reason, no crime, nothing that was ever, like I said, substantiated in any court of law. Now listen to this. This is the actual interview where they're actually very embarrassingly making this admission.
Totalt 69 personer blev utvisade från Sverige i samband med att polisen tillsammans med andra myndigheter under förra året genomförde en insats mot en religiös sekt som hade sin verksamhet i Sävsjön utanför Hällefors. Det berättar Per Lundbäck som är chef för polisens underrättelseverksamhet i Bergslagen. Tillsammans med övriga myndigheter inleddes en gemensam insats med mål att stänga ner verksamheten som polisen benämner som en sekt. Förutom polisen deltog bland annat Skatteverket, Kronofogden och Migrationsverket. Och just Migrationsverket kunde tack vare att flera av sektmedlemmarna var brittiska medborgare och att Storbritannien lämnat EU agera och totalt fatta 69 avslags- och utvisningsbeslut.
Så de blev ju utvisade ur Sverige, fick inte vara kvar längre. Därmed så upphörde ju verksamheten, vilket också var målsättning.
Och det sa polisen Per Lundbäck.
See, he actually said that this was the goal. So a grave violation of freedom of religion under Article 9 of the European Convention of Human Rights, of course damaging the reputation of the religion for no legal reason. I mean, it's bad enough how much our members are persecuted in Muslim countries, and then to add this to it, this was extremely harmful to them. And it's just an inciting hatred against the faith with statements that are, as I said, harmful for the uprooting of the members and the uprooting of their businesses. So basically they destroyed the businesses of 69 members who had to now migrate with their families, shutting down their businesses, and for all the damages and the money that we had to pay in tax, in lawyers' fees for that case of discrimination, we are now suing the Swedish government with the Chancellor of Justice. The case is ongoing, and we filed the case in January, and we hope to hopefully hear back 6 months. Should be this summer. These are some of the human rights organizations that we work with, and we continue to document the persecution. That was it. Thank you so much. I'm sorry taking so much of your time.
This is a practical panel rather than a theological one. And, regardless of whether we subscribe to your faith or whatever, you have an absolute right to your faith as long as it doesn't incite hatred or violence. And that's just the bottom line. And we, at least I'm sure the members of this panel, but I'm sure all of us will do what we can to support you in your in the freedom of religion or belief. Now, practically, I mean, Will has done a lot already. I put your story. I'm part of the UK Forum for Freedom of Religion and Belief, and I put it on my website, the Swedish one so far, but I'll add more. And but I have a question which will help inform what to do. We've already heard about your theology. So these are, you could say, these are your goals and purposes of the organization. But I'd be interested to understand more about the strategy. How do you, what is your plans for implementing your religion or spreading your religion? Is it a lot of proselytism? Do you have a lot of activities that are planned that which will obviously or likely get a reaction? So what would we do to help you in that respect? So I'm not really expecting you to answer that in full now, but I just want to put it out there that to understand and to help, we need to get more information on that aspect of things. So that's really what I want to say as a starter. And of course, you can say, I can explain more about that. But I think it's better that we let the others give their input, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, there are lots of points of interest, and I wrote down a few points. When it comes to persecution, discrimination, these facts are real. They are not just about Pakistan or the Middle East. Persecution and discrimination happen in Europe, even in cities that are very important for the European institutions like Strasbourg, Brussels. Discrimination happens every day. Now, of course, the way discrimination and persecution happen is slightly different from what may happen in other countries like Pakistan or others, but it does not mean that it infringes less the rights of believers and people of minority faiths, nor does it mean that it's less serious, because at the end of the day, people whose rights are infringed are not able to live their lives as they would, according to human rights and religious freedom. Religious freedom in the US, they made religious freedom the first star of the constellation of liberties, they say. And that's true, because religious freedom is something pertaining to us internally. In this way, it's the very first liberty that we have. To believe, not to believe, what not to believe. So there are so many different ways we can practice our freedom of religion and belief. And in the same way, there are many ways in which the authorities or other groups in our communities can stop us and prevent us from exercising our freedom of religion and belief. In my experience, when I first started with my studies and interest in religious freedom, one of the main topics was religious symbols. So there was a very important campaign in France against religious freedom. It does not stop, unfortunately. They carry on with this illiberal practice in France. Even recently, young girls in schools were prevented from wearing the abaya because it's considered as a symbol, religious symbol that will be in some way influencing others, and especially in primary schools, this is not something good according to the French philosophy. Issues happen with worship places. So if I, as the government, prevent you from building up your mosque, your temple, or your church, because I don't like your religion, because your religion is against the basic beliefs of the main predominant religion in that country, what am I doing? Whether I call myself a democratic republic or whatever, I'm discriminating against this group, and I'm practically persecuting this group, because I'm preventing this group and its members from practicing their own religion peacefully, because we are talking about peaceful people. When it comes to crimes and violence, that's a whole different story, but that applies to everyone. It does not need to be a religion. Violence can be regarding anyone, not just religion. So if you commit a crime, there is a criminal code in most countries. You can be prosecuted for the crime, regardless you are a religion or not. Martin just mentioned your activities, proselytism. This is something I put as point 3 on my list. It's very important to let people in a democratic society to go around and spread their teachings, provided this is done, of course, in a peaceful way and with peaceful goals. There are problems in schools, there are problems in the workplace, and in the last at least 3 decades in Europe, we saw a number of cases of discrimination of people belonging to minority religions in schools and in the workplaces. There are many cases, and I don't want to mention any, but there have been problems in Austria, there have been problems in Italy, in France, in Germany, and all over Europe. Problems also happen, as it happened to you, when people claim something, when groups make very important claims, as you mentioned today. We claim to have a Mahdi, we claim to be a new religion, we are quite liberal, as Hadil was mentioning, we do not promote, but are friendly with LGBT people. So these are all problems that can cause issues to a community and its members. I cannot ignore some similarities between you and the other Ahmadis, between you and other groups in regards to the Ramadan being in a different date. We mentioned this with Arya during the first online meeting. The forefathers of Nation of Islam, the Moorish Science Temple of America, they also have a different calendar, and they do the Ramadan in October. And they also had problems in some places because of this. And the Nation of Islam also had problems because of this. So the ways to discriminate against the group can be various and many, and can happen in many different ways. And as far as I'm concerned, and of course our friends and everyone in this room, we are here to learn first. We want to learn more about you, your practices. We learned a lot already this morning about your beliefs and theology, and thank you very much really for putting together in short time this concentration of knowledge and information for us. And we are also here to learn how to best help you. And so thank you again for putting together this lovely seminar conference, letting us learn about you and confirming to you how we can help you best. Thank you.
Thank you, Alessandro. First, I would say who we are, Human Rights Without Frontiers. Well, that was created by me and some other people 35 years ago. And we cover human rights in general, women's rights, LGBTQI issues, etc. But we have a special focus on freedom of religion or belief from a neutral perspective. It means we are not linked to any religious movement, and we have a totally independent look on anything that may happen to them, whatever the religious group. We cover about 20 different religious minorities, or majority religions in some countries that are minorities in others. We have at the level of advocacy, we have a daily newsletter reaching 10,000 subscribers. Those subscribers, so our choice has been to target political decision makers, influential institutions, and anybody who can have some power somewhere in various countries. So, for example, we have the members of the European Parliament, the members of the parliaments and senates sometimes of 16 member states of the European Union, all the embassies in Geneva, the embassies in Brussels, in New York for the UN, also in Washington, think tanks, etc. We have a website where we post our news. And apart from that, of course, we have very concrete actions as well, organizing events in Brussels at the Press Club at the European Parliament, but also with a partner at the United Nations. Now, coming to the issue of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light. For many years, we have been advocating for the issue of the issues in Pakistan of the Ahmadiyya community. And for years, we only thought that there was only that Ahmadiyya community that existed. And every time I was in contact with the people of our network, mainly in Great Britain, say, yeah, but there were people arrested in Algeria, and you don't publish anything about that. And there was no answer, never any answer about your group coming from the Ahmadiyya community. And then we realized when Hadil contacted us with the first news in Iran, the arrest in Iran, that you were a separate movement. And that's the reason why the Ahmadiyya community was absolutely silent about your issues. And first we thought, okay, the Ahmadi religion of peace and light is a sect of a sect. That was really our first reaction in the sociological meaning. So what my conclusion of that is that really you need to be perceived as you are on the, let's say, the radar of the international community. And it's very important and a priority to say the Ahmadi religion of peace and love has nothing to do with the Ahmadiyya community. It's a different movement, and we have different theology, and we have a different sort of persecution. So this being said, I would say that we have developed intensive advocacy with Hadil, and it's really a model, an example of a good collaboration between NGO and a group, whether it is ethnic or religious, that is persecuted. So first we started with some articles in the media in Brussels, the media online, and their outreach is the, let's say, the EU institutions. So the staff of the European Commission, European Council, the EEAS, External Action Service, and others. But beyond that, as I told you, we have the embassies in New York, in Washington, etc. So it goes beyond Brussels, our advocacy. Then, when there was really that crisis in Turkey, we contacted with our partner Thierry Val. We contacted the UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Religion or Belief, Nazila Ghanea, that I had known for 20 years. She was living and teaching in the UK at that time, and we asked her, okay, what can be done with the Ahmadi religion of peace and light? And we put Hadil in contact with her, and she did something really fantastic, that she contacted 3 other special rapporteurs of the UN, and they had a common statement saying to the Turkish authorities, please do not deport the 104 members of the Ahmadi religion back to their countries of origin, because they will be persecuted. But I must say that at the time, it's recent, it's 10 months ago, I was not really aware of the level and nature of persecution of the Ahmadi religion in Azerbaijan, in Thailand. Why in Thailand? It was difficult for me to convince my interlocutors about the type of persecution that you had to endure. And so it's progressively that I've learned more and more of what, and also recently about the case in Thailand, what is really the problem. So there was that initiative at the UN. We also went to the OSCE annual implementation meeting in Warsaw. We made a statement about the persecution in various countries, and also the fact that because the OSCE, of course, Algeria, Malaysia, they are not in the OSCE, but saying one of these days you will have people knocking on the door of your country and asking for asylum. And so you must know what are those people, where they are persecuted, why, how they are persecuted, what are the risks in those countries they are from, and especially from Algeria, because the people from Algeria, they had been adopted as prisoners of conscience by Amnesty International and by Human Rights Watch, who made also a lot of things for your movement. So that's how, in that direction, that we managed to involve the OSCE in one way or another. We didn't only make statements, but we went to the country delegations of the countries where we knew that some members of the Ahmadi religion wanted to go. And it was Italy, the Netherlands, Germany, etc. I don't remember the list now. We gave them a report and we told them what was the situation. So it was really intensive advocacy at the level of the UN and the OSCE. Now, about, and I will provisionally finish with this, about the EU. What did the EU do? So, the EU has a big problem with, let's say, yes, with the defense of freedom of religion or beliefs. I will not go into the details, the reasons that are behind that. But the EU has been without a special envoy for freedom of religion or belief for several years. Apparently no political consensus to have someone dealing with that issue. So finally, they appointed someone, Frans van Dalen, Belgian diplomat, retired Belgian diplomat, who is now in this position. He was put in this position last year, I think around August or September, but he will have to leave at the end of this year already. So that's only a transitional situation, I would say, not very effective. Before that, we had Jan Fiegel, who was proactive, very active. He went to Pakistan to save someone who was on the death row, and he managed it. So this one is not that type of all. He's a diplomat, so he's cautious. I had an appointment with him. I explained him the situation, and his answer, without going into the details, was purely institutional. But not going to the front line, you cannot expect that from him. Okay, so EU, we can't forget. But the UN and the OSCE remain two places where we must go on giving visibility to your case and to your situation and to your identity, because I think that's what is really important. And that's why I shared, let's say, my experience with your movement with Massimo, because I thought, okay, the academic community, the international academic community should have a closer look and a different look than ours on your group to reverberate some particularities and some truth about what your movement is and what it is not. And I think that the session of this morning, the sessions of this morning were very, very important for all of us. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you want to ask questions?
No, she was first.
This is a quick one. It's the other side of Martin's question. Are you aware in Sweden there's any kind of anti-cult group or FECRUS, the European anti-cult? I mean, Susan's done a lot of work on raids, and well, you can tell, but usually the police don't just act. They don't just act out of nothing. And very often there's been some sort of grouping of anti-cult networks. Are you aware of anything like that?
Yes.
And have you heard of FECRUS and the Swedish anti-cultists?
No, I have not. I have not heard. I've not heard. Yeah, not yet. Yeah. So no, I have not heard. We have not heard from them. But what we were aware what was happening is two things. One, we know that, as I mentioned in the beginning, especially fundamentalist groups, people who were part of the faith and have left it, so disgruntled member really went very systematically and made complaints and accusations against...
As individuals or...
As individuals. No, as individuals.
There's no network?
No. Huh? Ex-members. Ex-members, and we believe also they're probably allied with other fundamentalist groups, but it was not as a network. So we know that this was happening, and we were surprised that the Swedish government didn't even reach out to us or to even have a conversation or look into or start a due process. Especially because, like I said, none of it was substantiated in any court of law. The other thing...
Was the stuff in the media?
Actually it wasn't at all. It was really
Something I collected the Swedish media, but very small article. Here I have a question, well, a comment and a question. The first comment is, will involve me because it comes a time when the authorities needs to know what you are all about, your history. I met Nazila Ganea in Washington, D.C. at the IRF, International Religious Freedom Summit last month. I mentioned your case. And she said, please, we need the scholarly literature on who they are, because there is nothing. Of course, your self-presentation are useful, but that's just self-presentation. So that's why we called this meeting, and we move on from this one.
What have your interactions been with police and other state authorities here in Britain, in Crewe in particular? Based on the Swedish case, have you reached out to explain who you are to the local authorities here? Have there been positive interactions, or are you just under the radar?
No, it's actually been very positive. So here in the UK, we didn't have any problems. We even had a visit of the chief of police of Cheshire who came, the mayor of Cheshire who came. So invitation, yes, but we were constantly in communication. They welcomed us. They came and visited us, and we've been in communication. They were very understanding and aware of our grounds of persecution and offered to help us and protect us. Obviously, we're also suffering from, we receive also threats from fundamentalist groups here in the UK. So they were very positive and offered to be there. So yeah, in the UK we didn't have any problems and the interaction was very positive.
Yeah.
The question is, do you plan to present your case at the European Court of Human Rights? Because it's a clear case. You don't need, you just need to
Look,
make the case.
Yeah. We were actually considering this. We've submitted it in Sweden with the Counselor of Justice. The European Court of Human Rights, we did think about this. Because it's a very straightforward case, but we had a negative experience with the Turkey case. So the Turkey case, the case of the 104, was again a very clear case. So asylum seekers coming officially to claim asylum, they get beaten down and thrown to be deported back. And the European Court of Human Rights rejected it, even on grounds that have more to do with procedure rather than the of exhausting national remedies, rather than the merits of the case.
They have no doubt that this Sweden case.
Yeah, but they should exhaust national remedies.
But they did. But that's the thing that even yes, of course. So in the Sweden case, it might come back on that basis that national remedies should be exhausted first.
The problem of the European Court is normally the verdict come after 15 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It used to be very fast, but it became very popular.
Sometimes it's fast, but
So now
sometimes it takes 10 years.
So now it takes, yeah.
But it's something for sure. I mean, we've now went the national route in the Swedish legal system. But for sure, if the results doesn't, we'll definitely look into taking it to the European Court of Human Rights. Because as you said, it's such a clear case of direct discrimination. One of the things I actually forgot to add is, so they made very clearly their goal was to have the activities of the religion stop in Sweden. And one way to do that was the ending of the residencies, but the fastest way to do that is to cripple or end the residency of the head of the religion. So the head of the religion is a US citizen, and he qualified to obtain Swedish citizenship. So he fulfilled all the criterias. And there was another family, part of the faith, that also had fulfilled all the criterias. Both applied for Swedish citizenship. Both had the same scenarios, arrived in Sweden at the same time, worked in the same place. The Swedish authorities gave it to that family, but denied it to the head of the religion, even though it's a copy-paste case. And it was very clear that the only reason why they denied it is because of his religious function. So yeah, I think it's a very clear case. And I hope in the break you take the time to also speak to some of our Malaysian brothers who were there during the arrest, and I'm sure they can tell you a little bit more about what happened.